Tabakra. Okay, let's go on to the four. Let's go on to the four contemplations, limitless contemplations. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Sem jendam je dewatang dewe ju tang den pa ju jig, dungal tang dungal chichu tang trawa ju jig, Dungal mepe dewa tampatang mindra waju chik nearing chaktang ni tang drawe tang nung chempola ne pa chik. So I've called today's talk to truly know, and I've put know in inverted commas, one's obstacles is to no longer have obstacles. Now, it's a very interesting subject, and it comes from, the subject comes from the secret teachings of Padmasambhava. Okay, I've just taken some out of this and some out of other things, but the secret teachings of Padmasambhava, which is central instructions on mastering the energies of life. It's translated by Kenneth Lipman. I wouldn't advise you to get the book. I think it's a very difficult book. I even struggled with it, but I'm going to take a few things out of it, which I really think are so worthwhile. I think that if you want to read it, by all means read it, but it is very, very difficult. You'd understand parts of it, but not everything. But I want to take something really important out of it to give you in terms of obstacles. But I must start on the story of Shariputra and the Buddha. I've given this in another group. It might have been the Tuesday night group, but I think it's really an important story to start with. So in the time of Buddha Shakyamuni, the disciple Shariputra, who was most excellent in primal awareness, and Brahmajata from the pure land of the Buddha Ashoka, debated the qualities of the realm of the fourth universal guide, Shakyamuni. Shariputra argued that the realm of Shakyamuni, the fourth Buddha, is an impure realm strewn with rocks and stones and covered in thorn bushes, and that Shakyamuni Buddha and his retinue had shorter bodies than Buddhas residing in the other realms. Bodhisattva Brahmajata, who had reached the 8th level of Bodhisattva path, rejected Shariputra's claim about the inferiority of Shakyamuni's realm. He maintained that the realm of Shakyamuni, the fourth universal guide, has the same purity as the realm of Buddha Varashanu, the highest Buddha field and source of all the Buddha fields. They could not agree on this issue and decided to approach Shakyamuni Buddha himself for the answer. Aren't they lucky they had him to approach for the answer? Buddha transformed the world and its beings into a pure realm with his miraculous power in order to dispel the notion of inferior and superior. My realm is always like this, he said. Shariputra was amazed. Shakyamuni asked Shariputra, is it the fault of the sun or the inadequacy of the eye that a blind man cannot see things? It is the fault of the eye, Shariputra replied. My realm will always be like the one perceived by Brahmajati, the Buddha told him. The fault of not being able to see it is yours. Now, what do we see? I want you to challenge me today by all means. You know, I don't know why. I always think I've got to give lots and lots of material to keep you stimulated, and basically it's done. I should just go slowly and you talk out the things you really want, so you really get out of this what you want. But how would it feel if we suddenly became aware and knew the truth of all the obstacles in our lives? And how would it feel if they were suddenly no longer obstacles? The things you called obstacles are no longer obstacles. Now, what I remembered was that when I was starting dream yoga and starting to really become aware and lucid in my dreams and go on journeys, don't think I'm doing that now, and don't think I certainly did it when I ran to Dubai now. But I used to be able to really do it all the time. And I remember the training that I gave myself when I was in the sleep state and I was in the illusory body. If I was on this floor and I wanted to go right up because I wanted to see something, I used to think in the dream, but how can I get through the roof? It's solid. How am I going to get up and go through the roof? And then I'd say to myself, but that's an obstacle in your mind. And then I should say, come on, try. And I should take a deep breath and then whoops up and get through the roof. But it didn't just come naturally to me to walk through. And the same when you walk through a door or a wall or a glass or go through the windows. I used to have to tell myself, it's okay, Melanie, your body's not solid. You just think it is. Go through. But I always had to train myself like that. And then I'd go, and then I'd go through. I would go through, but it took a lot of guts and courage. And actually, these great masters can walk through walls. They can make footprints in rocks. They can do all kinds of things. So of course we can too, but we have this view of our own selves. Think of Buddha Shakyamuni, who had this perfect life within the walls of a perfectly exquisite palace. But somehow he knew there was something else beyond this. And when he eventually found it, this great thing, he said, I can't teach this to any people because they simply won't understand. So because of the begging of the gods, he did teach, but only relatively in the beginning, on suffering and on what we know, so people could understand. But me, myself, Melanie, I am totally sick and tired of when the lamas say, you could say this, or you could say that. I go, no, 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 no. Tell me the plain, simple truth. Let me digest it and let me get it. I don't want you could say this. They say you could say this because of how our minds are, because our minds create things all the time. I want the truth. I want the whole truth. I want to know, how did we move away from what we once knew? And now life is an obstacle course. Every day we've got these terrible obstacles. Shame, I think Linda keeps, is it Linda that keeps bumping off all the time? Okay. Zongsa Kienzi, in his book, What Makes You Not a Buddhist, he says, for Siddhartha, the Buddha, the ultimate resting place of nirvana isn't a place at all. What it is it's a release from the straitjacket of delusion. I love that sentence. A release from the straitjacket of delusion. So what we believe about ourselves, it makes us into a complete straitjacket, and we delude ourselves that this is how it is, and we go on and on and on and on like that. And then in the end, we really do believe, and we really are stuck by the obstacle. Okay, but how did we arrive at a place called the straitjacket of delusion, which is the true cause of all our obstacles in life? Now, when you go to the English dictionary or Google it, I Googled the word obstacle, and it said, a thing that blocks one's way or hinders your progress. A thing that blocks your way or hinders your progress. But what if wholeness or total completeness was already in us? Always, even before we thought there were obstacles in our way. What if the goal was already achieved before we started? And all we had to do was realize this, and then the obstacles would disappear. And I put on the page when I was writing this on the plane, what if? What if the obstacles disappeared? You'd say, yay, I'm free. But when you've got freedom, are you sure? Can you carry it out? It's a very interesting question because I'm not sure that we can. And we're going to look at the secret teachings of Padmasambhava, which is translated by Kenneth Lipman. Fascinating instructions, but on the wholeness, but on wholeness, the Dzogchen way, but very difficult to understand when caught in the relative ego-centered world. So what I'm asking you to do today is to get yourself uncaught in the ego-centered world. Let's go into a world the way it's described by Padmasambhava, the way it is translated by Kenneth Lipman, who was very dedicated. I think he was a psychiatrist or a doctor or whatever. And you know, he gives a lot of things, and then this particular chapter that I'm interested in was called A Dzogchen Approach to Yoga, the view of Dzogchen. So Dzogchen, which is the highest form of Vajrayana, it really goes beyond Vajrayana, is very, very important to understand. And he says, I'll give you a little bit, then I'm going to throw it open. In the Tibetan tradition, Dzogchen means the understanding of total completeness, the primordial wholeness of a person. According to this perspective, and you don't have to take it, you can go on the gradual path, this wholeness is present right from the very beginning of the path, from wherever we make a start. At first, this wholeness, this completeness sounds very abstract and philosophical, as either a high-sounding platitude or the product of some long, complex process. A key to unlocking this seeming paradox, that the goal is already present in the beginning. So where you've got the obstacle over there, the goal is already achieved before you've even started. When you take your mind into the nature, okay, the goal was present in the beginning, is to look directly to our experience in order to recognize, know that some kind of motivation already exists. There is a motivation, if we tap inside it, that already exists. From the point of view of Dzogchen, this whole teaching, its basis, path, and goal, can be understood by looking into our motivation. What are we doing here? What's our purpose in life? How many roles do we play that we don't even care about? I know that when I go on the kind of trip that I went on now, it's very strange because my being doesn't belong in it. And yet here it is, and I need to be able to be who I am within that. So it means your motivation that you have right in the beginning is really, really important. And, you know, and if you look at yourself, when you get in a panic about things, when you get into a knot about things, when you keep on criticizing yourself all the time, there is already this wall, this hindrance, this obstacle right in front of you. And you can't see a way to get through it. And you can't even see that the obstacle is your total creation. It never was there. You created it in the first place. Like I had somebody say to me, Melanie, every time that I want to come to a group, something else happens. She said, I don't understand it. Every time, or my granddaughter's having a concert, or this one's doing that, or I'm called in for an urgent appointment, or this or that. And I said to her, do you know that you are creating your own obstacles? She goes, never, because I really want to go. I want to come to a group, but every week something happens and I can't get there. And I go, look deeply in your mind what your motivation is. Because when your motivation is very, very clear to you, then no matter what happens, there are occasions you can't, but as a rule, your motivation is to be there, and you will see that you are there. And it's really, really important that all of you understand that. The obstacle comes from your own mind. So people don't understand that when they can't reach something, the obstacle is in their mind. They created it. And there it is as a form. And it will keep coming up until they are able to see through it. And you have to look at your motivation. What is your motivation? To please people, to be phony? What's your motivation? You've got to look at that. All the Buddhist schools talk of somewhere in the beginning of the path about the importance of motivation called bodhicitta, okay? The Mahayana tradition, for example, he says, emphasizes the motivation to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. In that case, motivation is the basis for setting out on your path. I want to go on this path. I want to get enlightened so that I can help all sentient beings. But Dzogchen is said to be a direct rather than a gradual path. Thus, motivation is not the starting point for doing something else. The starting point is not separate from the goal, the path, and the goal. So then, what do we mean by motivation in Dzogchen? Motivation, or bodhicitta, is just another name for Dzogchen, the total completeness of one's being present right now. Repeat that to yourself. I have the total completeness of my being right now. Doesn't feel like it. Doesn't seem like that. But it only doesn't seem because of how you have created with your human mind. But the total completeness of one's being is present right now. More precisely, motivation here refers to that aspect of one's complete being. What's one's complete being? It is the ability to know itself. The problem with us is we do not know ourselves. Yes, we know the role we play. We look in the mirror, we go, God, you're getting old. Oh, you're so fat. Look what you ate yesterday. Look at this. How bad you were as a mother. How bad you were as a teacher. Oh, we know all of that. Sure. But do we know in the complete being the ability to know itself? It refers to the pure fact of being aware, our capacity and our desire to know, to know, to know, to know. The goal of our capacity and desire to know is nothing other than this awareness itself. So he says, knowing wants to know. Knowing wants to know. You could write that sentence down and debate it at home with yourself. Knowing wants to know. The trouble with all of you is you don't know that you know. As soon as you know that you know, then you start to see who you are. I am the essence. I am the nature of the essence. I am the expression of the essence. I am not limited Melanie with all her funny, corny roles. Knowing wants to know. I'll give just a little more and then I'll throw it open, honest. We experience this basic knowing as a desire to understand our world and ourselves. Motivation is always there, working, shedding light, making conscious, mirroring the whole universe, overcoming boundaries to the unknown. Its intention is to know. And the practice of Dzogchen is to experience and be this knowing. Can you be this knowing? Okay. It is wholeness desiring to know, to mirror itself. What does he mean? It is wholeness desiring to know, to mirror itself. So just think of that sentence. Wholeness is who you really are, not in this limited body, but in your real nature. You are completely whole, you are completely complete, but you don't know yet. And knowing, he says here, is its wholeness desiring to know and mirror itself. Now think about this. Everything that is in your life, everything that is given to you, is just a reflection of the mirror of your mind. Now, if that mirror, where's my mirror? I don't know where it is. If that mirror is dirty, if the mirror of your mind is dirty, if the mirror of your mind has always got obstacles and terrible things, then don't go out and clear all the obstacles. Clear this mirror, clean it up, fix it up, because this wants to know itself and mirror different things in the world. It's so important that you understand this, and then we'll come to the obstacle afterwards, how we do it. But your mind is a mirror. And if it was a complete mirror, it would mirror different things. Otherwise, it mirrors all the obstacles, all the hindrances, all the things we haven't got, all the jobs we want, all the things, mirrors all of that. And we aren't complete. We feel terrible about ourselves. So Dzogchen is known in Tibetan as a teaching directly from the mind of the primordial Buddha, Samantabhadra. But this does not mean, as I have said, that it is not a practical path to Buddhahood, nor that one cannot practice the perspective of Dzogchen right from the start of the path. You just change your mind, and then you know that you are already whole. Whatever you do after that reflects your wholeness, because your wholeness is a mirror. If whatever you do has got hindrances and obstacles because it's your human mind, it reflects hindrances and obstacles and ugly things and attracts all the different people. You know, my oldest grandson of these kids that we went with on holiday gets very cross about things, really, really cross. So we're sitting and having dinner on Saturday night. So I said to him, you know what? I want you to look carefully at your anger, and we'll do something on anger at the end. I want you to look carefully at your anger. I said, lots of things frustrate and irritate you. You're a clever boy, and you could see the world maybe from him. He's quite a deep child. He's the one that always drew all these mandalas and everything. And he does Tai Chi and all of that sort of thing. But he gets so frustrated, especially with his little brothers and everything. He gets really angry. So I said to him, so there was like a pan with chips in it at the table. So when it was finished, I took the pan up like this and I said, this pan, can you see in it? He said, yes, I can. I said, well, this pan is like a mirror. And when you cross and there's a cross person in front of you, it's just the reflection in the mirror. If you stop reflecting it, you won't have people annoying you, because if people annoy you, you'll just let it go over your head. But because you feel angry about so many things, you in the mirror are producing angry people that irritate you all the time. And I explained to the parents, this is called mirror-like wisdom. They were very interested. But, you know, I explained to them that you've got to see, what does the mirror reveal? And you know, when we understand that we are whole from the start, it needs to be transmitted in order to wake up or point out this primordial knowing in a person. In Dzogchen, this is known as the direct introduction. It's called a pointing out introduction. It's when some of you will be really lucky enough, and some of you have already been lucky enough to meet this wonderful master who points out who you really are. Unbelievable. He doesn't see you as a limited character. He sees your whole history, your whole, not your history of this life, but your whole history of your Buddha nature. He sees you like that, and he points it out to you. And if you get it, then straight away you already know that you are whole and that you are going to reflect something different. When I was right at the beginning of my journey, I went to Minja Dorje, Yongyu Minja Rinpoche's teaching at Sami Ling, and he gave the pointing out instruction. He was explaining that you're a primordial being. I didn't even get one thing out of it. It went right over my head. You've got to be awake and susceptible. But when I went to Taisitu Rinpoche, he told me what you really like. And my whole being lit up, absolutely lit up, because I realized that's the truth. And I can't ever forget that truth wherever I am, whatever I'm doing. She's laughing. Patricia, tell me, share with me what you ask me if you want, because I'm going to come to the obstacle, because we identify with what the mirror reveals. And if it's obstacles, we identify it. And if we can see through that, then there are no more obstacles. So challenge me, go on. What comes through your mind? Are any of you thinking, well, then what an idiot I am. Why do I keep believing in this limited little human self? And then I get what Melanie's saying. I get what Kenneth Livman's trying to say, what Padmasambhava taught him. And then tomorrow morning, I forgot it.
Hi, Melanie.
Please, my baby, Tati.
I've been thinking about these things, but obviously with more simple words and based on not Dzogchen, but based on what I heard so far. So regarding obstacles, there's a quite dualistic perception because we should be really taking everything as the blessing of the guru and use it as an opportunity to actually practice. So even Jyogo Kensi Rinpoche say that, so to use it all. And regarding the motivation itself, our achievement will be proportional to our motivation. So if we're able to actually express as high as we can and grow through the application and aspiration, we will eventually get to ultimate bodhicitta. And regarding the obstacle itself, it might be considered an obstacle to begin with, but depending on the causes and conditions, you'll get to a point where you don't know if the actual obstacle is going to lead you to something, a blessing, a true feel like blessing. And regarding the knowing that you've been saying about knowing this and that, I think we have to be careful with pride, because if we're not careful, that's one of the worst things we can do. And work with the attachment to both extremes, both actually the obstacles and the actual, I don't know the word, but nice things.
Okay, I like what you're saying, but I need to point something out to you. That what you're saying is that if you've got an obstacle in your life, okay, you are saying this is a blessing. This might be the guru's blessing to really teach me to wake up and know. Okay, now that's really, really good. And at the level that you're talking, it's brilliant. Okay, but in the Dzogchen, there isn't really an obstacle. So basically, you're not learning from that obstacle. you're actually, so you can use that as an obstacle. Like I said to my grandson, if you've got angry people in front of you, you've created that obstacle yourself. But when you get to the wholeness, the completeness, then there really aren't obstacles. I'll show you how it works in a minute, but then there really aren't obstacles. So it's a very, very interesting thing, because when you see it as the guru's blessing, it still means you believe there's a hindrance, an obstacle, and that's really hurting you. But when you actually see through it, like I was giving you in my dream, where you're in the illusory body and you can go through the wall or you can go through the ceiling, you're already going another step higher. So just think about that, because it's very, very interesting. I'd like to read to all of you. I was looking at What Makes You Not a Buddhist by Zongsa, and I want to just read you what he wrote about what happened to the Buddha when he was actually doing his final thing under the Bodhi tree. He says, through many years of contemplation and penance, Siddhartha remained steadfast in his determination to find the root cause of suffering and ease his own suffering and the suffering of others. Then he goes to Magadha in the heart of India to meditate, and he gets he gets kusha grass to sit on, and it's recognized as an auspicious sign, and he finds his place using the kusha grass as a mat. And silently he vowed, this body may rot, I may disintegrate into the dust, but until I find the answer, I will not rise. Now I'm wondering how many of you are prepared to do that. You don't have to sit on the kusha grass, but can you say, I am not going to stop pursuing this matter until I get a glimpse of the answer. No, we don't. We say, that was an interesting talk Melanie gave, and it was nice, and now I've got all my obstacles to do. You have to persevere like he did. As Siddhartha sat in contemplation beneath the tree, he did not go unnoticed. Mara, the king of the demons. Now, does Mara exist? Does this obstacle Mara exist? Mara is internal. You all have Mara in you, just as you have Vajrasattva in you. They're not external. Anyhow, Mara, the king of demons, heard Siddhartha's vow and sensed the strength of his resolve. Mara grew sleepless, for he knew that within Siddhartha existed the potential to throw his entire domain into chaos. Being a strategic warrior, he sent 5 of his most beautiful daughters to distract and seduce the prince. As the girls, we call them apsaras or nymphs, set out, they had full confidence in their seductive talents. But as they approached the meditating Siddhartha, their beauty began to vanish. They withered and aged. They grew warts, and a stench rose from their skin. Siddhartha did not stir. The dejected apsaras returned to their father, who was furious. How dare anyone refuse his daughters? In his rage, Mara summoned his retinue, a great army furnished with every imaginable weapon. Mara's army attacked in full force, but to their dismay, all the arrows, spears, stones, and catapults aimed at Siddhartha, he just transformed them into a rain of flowers as soon as they came within reach of their target. After many hours of unsuccessful warfare, Mara and his army were exhausted and defeated. Finally, Mara came to Siddhartha and with all his diplomacy tried to talk him up into giving up his quest. Siddhartha said he could not give up after all those lifetimes of trying. Mara asked, how can we be so sure you have been struggling for so long? Siddhartha answered, I don't need validation. The earth is my witness. And with that, he touched the ground, the earth shook, and Mara evaporated into thin air. Mara the obstacle. Thus Siddhartha found liberation and became a Buddha. He had discovered the path to end suffering at its very root, not only for himself, but for all people. The place of his final battle against Mara is now called Bodh Gaya, and the tree under which he sat is called the Bodhi tree. This is the story that Buddhist mothers have told their children for many generations. Now, I want you to think about that story, because I want you to see that all the maras you have, all the obstacles you have, all the arrows people send you are all your own creation, looking in the reflection of the mirror of your mind. Those are your creations. Just as you created them, they're going to dissolve if you already have completion. But if you see yourself as a limited, pathetic human being that's got a little role that's trying to do Buddhism but doesn't ever get that, of course you can't. Then that is more powerful because you believe the reflections to be real. You believe them to be solid, and they defeat you. Now, what he says here is this direct introduction. I'll just read you a little bit more. This direct introduction is like seeing all of one's being in a mirror and understanding that one's own awareness is that mirror. It is with this experience that the way of Dzogchen begins. But such a perspective is extremely difficult for our limited ego structure to assimilate. It clashes with our self-image. It's too radical. We want to fit it back into our habitual perspective, to relegate it to the status of an experience, which easily becomes a memory that we can assimilate. It takes hard work to really be that mirror, to overcome that tremendous gulf of reified duality. Now write those words down. Reified duality, because we're going to talk about what that really is. Reified duality that prevents us from being it. I'll tell you what that is now. We identify with too much of what the mirror reveals, all that we cannot accept and we cannot understand in ourselves. That creates the observer. I'm an observer who judges, struggles, strategizes, who defends, who needs such a self-image. Thus, we can never truly relax and open up to an awareness that is truly free to let everything be experienced and to create out of that pure knowingness your bodhicitta. He says, what I'm saying is that this knowingness, which is revealed in the direct introduction of Dzogchen and likened to a mirror, also reveals the obstacles to its full realization. So while it's knowing, the mirror knows, it also reveals all your obstacles in front of you, okay? And in this sense, the knowledge revealed in direct introduction provides a basis for overcoming obstacles just in its very desire to know. Another way to put this is that the experience of a direct introduction to your own real nature provides us with a unique perspective, a way of working with that nature. We can work with it with our situation. It provides us with something related to, but ultimately more than the desire to know that is involved when you have psychotherapy. Now, I could see that so clearly, because when you have psychotherapy, you're dealing with your emotions, you're dealing with your life circumstances, you're having somebody help you to understand those feelings. But when you get into this teaching, you begin to know that none of those feelings are permanent. None of them are solid. None of them are outside of you. And with your awakened nature, you can change them. So what is the word? Reified dualism. Reified means solidified. You think that this bowl is a solid bowl, and you think that this gong is a solid thing, and you think that it's outside of me. You think it's over there and I'm here. That's dualism or duality. And reification means you make it solid. You make it solid. You make everything solid. Burn when you're moving into a new house. Don't you make it all solid? All the problems, all the difficulties, all the obstacles, you make them solid. But if you knew that you were already complete, even without the home, then it wouldn't be like that. Like suddenly I saw these trees this morning and I thought, well, this is quite a nice home, temporary one, but it's quite a nice home. I got a different view to everything. So he says, we then have at least a glimpse of a radically new perspective from which to observe ourselves. The methods of Dzogchen provide us with a means to nurture this new perspective. And he says his primary teacher, who was Namkha Norbu, said, observe yourself to discover how you are limited and conditioned, trapped in the cage of dualism like a little bird. What this means, he says, is that we need to see all our obstacles have this solid duality. It's outside of me at their root. And that's our fundamental limitation. As soon as you can see it, it isn't there. So Zongsa, just to give you two more examples, then I'll open it and then we'll do some meditation. He says, rational thinking confines us, makes us think things truly exist. And he says in his book, Siddhartha was not irrational. He was merely asserting that conventional rational thinking is limited. We cannot or will not comprehend that which is beyond our own comfort zone. He says it's much more functional to work with the linear concept of yesterday, today, and tomorrow than to say time is relative. When we say time is relative, oh my goodness, what does it mean? It means I'm here, then I'm in Dubai, now I'm back, then I'm going to be leaving this house. I can't, that's the only way I can understand it. But maybe I was never in this house. Maybe I was just passing through everything. Maybe I solidified it and made it something between me and the house. And he says, we are not programmed to think. I can fit into that yak horn without changing my size or shape. I mean, Milarepa, the hail came and he went inside the yak horn. And Rechungpa looked inside the yak horn and thought, how did he get in there? And Milarepa said, I'm singing my songs. Come and sit here beside me. And Rechungpa looked at his size and he looked at the size of the yak horn and he said, I can't fit there. How did you get in? Have you changed your size? No, he hasn't. Well, how did he get into the yak horn? He got into the yak horn because he never was a solid object. He could see into his completeness, which means if there's something in the external environment, you create it and find a place to go. There's no small, there's no big, there's no anything. We break the concepts and we can't do that. Instead, we continuously confine ourselves with our safe and narrow perspective that have been handed down for generations. When these perspectives are examined, however, they don't hold up. For example, the concept of linear time upon which this world relies so heavily does not account for the fact that time has no real beginning and no end. We know where it is. And using this rationale, which is imprecise at best, we measure and label things as truly existing. We think this book that I'm picking up is a real solid book. But what the Buddha did was, he took the book, he took the dish, he took the world, and then he said, hang on, this is a solid book. Let me look deeper. So he looked deeper, and then the book started breaking up into atoms. And then he looked even deeper, and the atoms began to break up. And then he looked even deeper, and the atoms got smaller and smaller and smaller until there wasn't anything there. But the book was still there for our rational mind. Look, I'm not trying to shock you today. I'm trying to introduce the pointing out instructions that Guru Rinpoche gave, which is what this is all about. He said to know your obstacles is not to have obstacles anymore. And you're all skiffing me out, Deluxe. Okay. So what do you think, Edith? What do you think? You who draw things, what do you think about that?
What I'm busy thinking about it because it's quite a tricky concept to get your head around.
It's not a concept, though.
Okay, it's not a concept.
It's so difficult, yeah, but it is difficult to get it to understand because we've been living like this for so long. Okay.
I mean, yeah, all matter is just atoms vibrating at a different level. So the lower vibrational atoms are more solid, and that's how it works in science. So I guess, yeah, they are just atoms, and they could just none of them they just can disappear if the vibration changes. If the atoms start vibrating in a different way,
yeah, but what happens if the atoms aren't changing, but your mind is? What happens if the atoms aren't, but your mind is? Think about that.
Okay, I will.
Because everything you see is a reflection of your mind. So if you see it as solid and outside yourself, it is indeed an obstacle that is really difficult for you to get. But the minute you start with what Tatiana was saying, you start to see that this is given to me to find something, and you start to look at it. It's really important. So to give you another example of Zongsa, there were so many beautiful examples in this book. He says here, our true nature is like a wine glass, and our defilements and obscurations are like dirt and fingerprints on the wine glass. When we buy the glass, it has no inherently existing fingerprints. When it becomes soiled, the habitual mind thinks that the glass is dirty, but not that the glass has dirt. So we look at the glass and we say, this glass is dirty, I better wash it. We never think that the glass is not dirty, but the glass has dirt on it. So he says, these impurities can be removed. And he says, if the glass is dirty, then the only option is to get rid of the glass itself, because the dirt and the glass would be united into one thing, a dirty glass. But that's not the case. The dirt, the fingerprints, and other substances appeared on the glass due to a number of circumstances. We picked up the glass with dirty hands, we put it on, we drank it with lipstick, we put dirty marks on the glass, whatever. Those are all temporary. We can use all kinds of different methods to wash the dirt away. We can wash the glass in the river or the sink or the dishwasher, or we can ask the maid to clean it. But no matter what method we use, the intent is to remove the dirt, not the glass. Now think about that. There is a big distinction between washing the glass and washing the dirt. We might contend that it's just a semantic distinction when we say we're washing the dishes. We mean we're washing the impurities off the dishes. And in that case, Siddhartha would agree. But if we think that the glass is somehow different than it was before, there's a misconception, because the glass has no inherent fingerprints. When you remove the dirt, the glass isn't transformed. It's the same glass you bought at the store. Now think of yourself. My being can be purified of negativity. So when he gives the example of Jack, we could do Jack next time, who goes into a dark room and there's a hose pipe in the dark room, and Jack goes, oh, there's a snake, there's a snake, there's a snake, come and help me, somebody get rid of the snake. Okay, then someone switches on the light, and lo and behold, Jack sees it's a hose pipe, not a snake. Now think about what Guru Rinpoche is teaching us. Don't dismiss it quickly, okay? Because I want you to think about it. Just as our enthusiasm for doing the dishes comes from trusting we can have a clean glass, our enthusiasm for eliminating our obscurations comes from trusting we have a Buddha nature. Do you trust that we have a Buddha nature? Or do you just think, it's what they say, but I don't know that I've got it? Very interesting. There's lots of other examples, which I'll give you next time because I'm not rushing this. It's really very interesting. Because in Dubai, we went to a place called the Museum of the Future, or something like the Futuristic Museum. Anyway, that was an eye-opener, like no eye-opener in my life. I thought it was all going to be about AI and the kids would love it and all these computers, and wasn't it all like that? It was some brilliant minds who looked into the future. So everything in that museum was for 2052, 2075. Okay. I mean, I won't be around and I hope I won't be back at that time. But wow. You know, when you look at it, first of all, there was one suit that you get into that you're going to fly to work. And the taxis, they showed you the new taxis, which will also fly you to work. They won't be on the ground polluting everything. They'll be free of pollution. There were so many things. There was a library. One of the floors was a library. And in this library were all these glass bottles, hundreds of glass bottles. And in the glass bottles was the DNA of every single creature on this planet. Okay? And so when I said to the cupboard, where's the human DNA? There was one bottle with the human DNA in. It was like a little person holding a child. That was the DNA of the human. But all the other creatures were the DNA of the seaweed, the insects, the butterflies, the animal kingdom. Every single person they had, every single being, sentient being on this planet was in those bottles. And this was the library in 2075 where all the DNA, why did they keep the DNA? Because then there would never be an extinct species. Can you imagine the plants? Every plant, every tree, everything had its DNA in a bottle. I mean, I was blown away. The one floor that had all these things of the future. And then I thought to myself, and then there was the one called the wellness floor, which I loved. Unfortunately, the children didn't love it. So we spent a very little time there, and I was stupid because I should have gone back. When they were doing all the other things, there was a children's place to go where they had things of the future. I should have gone back because there were amazing things in the wellness center. Like you came in front of a gong, okay? And you had to stand and look into the gong. And the sounds were sounds of energy that were coming off the gong, millions of sounds of energy. Now, I knew from doing Vajra body, speech, and mind that what you could achieve with this was Vajra speech, because Vajra speech is the energy that comes off the gong. And if you could relate to the gong, then you would have Vajra speech, which is a completely different thing to our ordinary speech, which I'm teaching them on the Tuesday night. So they had things like that. Then they had vibrational stuff you had to put your hands on. And as you put your hands like this, the vibrational energy came up on your hands, and they were all going, come, we going, come, we going. I said, no, maybe it can heal my arthritic fingers or something like that, because the energy, came off, was absolutely amazing. They had this whole wellness thing where you had to go. Then they had a meditation room where you lay down on the floor, and you could lie down. And I mean, you look at all of this and it says 2075. And the thing is, you think to yourself, where do these people get these minds to create this in your mind? But of course you can create it, because there's nothing new on earth. It's all things that have happened before. So they're beings that come in, one bottle with Homo sapiens DNA in. And I thought, are we only worthy one little bottle in this whole library? That's all, one bottle of the DNA of humans, because it was for humans to see and deal with all the species and how the species in nature, it gave you all the planetary.
Mel, you have frozen at the wrong moment. Mel. Oh, not sure what's happened to her. Hold on, everybody. Okay, Mel has she's back on. Mel, unmute yourself.
Can you believe it? As I'm talking about that, the whole precious, But I can't begin to tell you, when I saw all these buildings and all these things of people's minds. I don't know how they get to create this and this technology. It's like living on another planet, honestly. But how does it happen? It happens because our minds are amazing, because we've got the motivation, we've got the bodhicitta, we've got everything to try and help. I don't want to say anything. We're going to do some meditation. I'm going to continue next. Please, Mimi.
Won't you just complete that part where you froze about us having to realize only one tiny little bottle of the human DNA and the importance of the other species? It's something for us to recognize.
Yeah. I really, really felt, sorry. I really felt to myself that it's amazing, because I expected to see all the different DNAs of humans and different races. It's all bullshit, that. It's all rubbish. I mean, you know, that we've said different genders, different this is the new age. We've got different this, half of us are half female, half male. I mean, maybe that's all just made up by the human mind. There's one DNA bottle in that whole library, Mimi. It's so interesting, isn't it? I mean, it was absolutely interesting because we're supposed to really learn from, we're supposed to learn from the species of nature who go in harmony. We're not in harmony. And what I'm trying to say is that in Padmasambhava's teaching that Kenneth Lipman has given, he says, we have that reified dualism. And, you know, he says we cannot be whole. And so what happens to us is because we can't be whole, we split off parts of ourselves. Now, I'm happy to go through some of this again next time, because I think for some of you, this might be complex. Karen, do you want to say anything, by the way? I'm always thinking of you when I'm talking this. Do you want to say anything, Cooks?
Not
Please.
really, but I find that our biggest obstacle is our mind, and that's what we're trying to get rid of. That's all I have to say. And that's what basically you have said, and that pointing out instruction doesn't have to be through a guru or a teacher. It can just be anything when you have that realization.
Absolutely.
I mean, with me, it was like opening up a pistachio nut. And you know how you open it, and then suddenly this little green thing you chuck in your mouth. But I'm saying is that was, I think, my first pointing out instruction, and I thought, oh, that's mind. I have to crack myself open, and then that's mine. So that's all I have to say. That's the biggest, I mean, so body is biggest obstacle, and there, and yes, we are Buddha nature, bodhicitta, that's all we are.
Yeah.
And again, our obstacle is our mind. That's all I have to say. And I think when, it doesn't matter how one realizes it or when, but when you do, I mean, of course, it's not on my mind or with me constantly, but when one has that pointing out instruction on the nature of mind, it doesn't matter how it's done, then that changes everything. That's all I have to maybe add. What you're saying.
Beautiful. What you've added is so important, because, you know, I see all the time with people who are in trouble that they forget this nature of mind. Okay.
Yeah.
So the obstacles are created because you feel you're in trouble. Meanwhile, you're in exactly, that's what Tatiana's point, you are exactly the right situation that you need to be. But how do you train your mind to see through all these things when you're going through them? It's really, really difficult. You know, and sometimes you get the pointing out instruction and you can't get it because you just can't realize that me, this little me, who's nothing, you know, is me who's nothing, is suddenly, there's so much more to me than I ever really realized. It's such an amazing awakening when you realize. But when you realize, everybody, you have to keep reinforcing it, because straight away, 10 minutes later, you're into the other stuff, the limited stuff. So you have to keep on recreating and realizing and redoing, and not solidifying and not seeing that things are outside of you. They really are inside of you.
And Mel, if we all are one, then we are all in one bottle, and we need to crack that bottle open, and then all beings are part of that greater mind.
Yeah, exactly. No,
it's really so easy. We just make it difficult.
But I will give you next week, I will go over some of this. It might be difficult because we have to have, he says, we have to have at least a glimpse of a radically new perspective from which to observe ourselves. So as soon as you're thinking limited, just become aware of it. Knowing wants to know. Just become aware of it, and you go, here I'm going with my same old crap and my same old rubbish and my same old hindrances, and here I'm going again doing that. And you have to go beyond that. You know, I find that all these articles and things are just put in front of me all the time. I think Guru Rinpoche gives them to me because otherwise I don't know how I could ever teach new things and everything. But I think that this is really fascinating and I want to go on teaching it. But if anybody wants to say anything, please do. And otherwise, let's do a little meditation. Anyone want to say or add anything? It's really stuff that you have to think very deeply about. You don't have to think, you have to sit and just allow that awareness to expose itself. Knowing needs to know. Finished. Once you've got that sentence, you've got everything you've got. And then your motivation is I want to know this real self that I have. So let's do a meditation. I'd like to do the threefold sky practice. Kenneth Lippman gives a lot of practices that he does, but they're yoga practices. I think they're better done if you're all together, and we could do the physical exercises as well. But today I'd like to just do a short sky gazing, integrated, non-meditation. So just breathe in and breathe out and just come to this moment in time. We mingle the three spaces, the outer sky, the inner sky, and the secret sky, all combined into one. Blue, which is the color of the Dharma Dhatu, the color of space, the true color. The external sky is called space because it is unimpeded, unblocked. It is empty and open. The inner sky is the empty mind which all sentient beings have. Otherwise, mind would be like a piece of wood or a stone. Since mind is sentient, that is the mind referenced in the inner sky's empty mind. Spacious, open, blue, like the external sky, but inside you. The secret sky is the empty awareness, Rigpa, which is the essence of mind. So we have the external sky, open, spacious, unimpeded, unblocked. The internal sky, the empty mind, which all sentient beings have. It's open, spacious, absolutely free. And the secret sky is that nature of the essence of mind. The nature is total empty awareness, Rigpa. Once you recognize the essence, the three skies are unified. Otherwise, without recognizing the essence of mind, you will only have unified two skies, not three. In that moment of recognizing awareness, that feeling inside you to know, There is no fixation on outer objects. There is no duality whatsoever. As Karen has just said, we're all one. The outer sky, the inner sky, and the awareness, sharp clarity, luminousness. No fixation. We do not attempt to mingle the three skies, otherwise it's fixation. We direct our eyes towards space. Baseless space has no reference point, no top, no bottom, no end, no direction. Absolutely open and spacious. For the secret sky of empty awareness, Rigpa, there are no solid thoughts, uncompounded, yet free from thoughts. Its essence is empty, its nature is luminous, and its capacity is unobstructed. We sentient beings run after the thoughts and forget the essence. In the secret space of empty Rigpa, there is still wakefulness, and it is not past, present, and future. It is just one time dimension. Look into your heart now and meet Rigpa, awareness, the part of you that really wants to know. If you look away from your heart, the essence evolves into poisons, and you're in a solid existence of duality with everything outside of you. So look into your heart. Recognize your beautiful essence of Rigpa. To do this, we just sit with our eyes directed into space. Leave that mind without fixation. Don't form the thought, I'm looking into the sky. Without thinking of the sky outwardly, without forming any thought, inwardly you mingle the three. Your eyes face outer empty sky, but really your mind faces to the empty Rigpa, no duality. You do not have to sit and hold this unity of the three skies. Just look once and then completely relax. Let go. And then the three skies mingle perfectly. That's called an integrated non-meditation in the Dzogchen practice. It's a lovely meditation to do. And just do the three skies yourself. It's really, really good. So there's lots to say and to give you, but I think that's really enough for one session. Were you able to follow? You were, Bet, I saw you, even cuddled in your bed. Quite a lot of you are really able to follow it, but don't hassle with it. Don't struggle with it. Don't try to understand it. Just rather take some of the sentences you might have written down and just allow them to be. See how you find them. Like to know one's obstacles is not to have obstacles. How can that be? How was your group last week? Was it good? I'll ask you afterwards. Let's let's dedicate. And then we'll stop recording. Let's dedicate to all sentient beings, and especially to the human species. May they all have realization. May they all know that Buddha nature takes us to be at one with beings. And that's what we all need. May we all sentient beings find that oneness. And through this merit, may all beings attain omniscience. May all obscurations fall away from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may all beings be freed. Sonam die tamche zipane tokne nepe tranam pamshede jegana chi balap tropaye sipe sole doa dro warsho.